With 2024 coming to a close, PHANTEKS ran a couple of entry-level cases that I think did pretty good, and this is one of them, the Eclipse G400A, while the other one being the XT Pro, which was released earlier back in February. Now, the G400A is another model in the Eclipse series that PHANTEKS has been doing for many years. In fact, last time and the only time I ever built in an Eclipse case was back in, I think, 2019, which was the P400S for a friend's gaming rig. Now, fast forward several years, we get an updated version which comes in satin black and matte white, while still keeping that same shape as the legacy models before it. And really, you can just tell by the front panel. The G400A launches at the price of $109.99, which is pretty expected for what it is, and I also have no doubt that as occasional discounts happen throughout the year, I would anticipate it dropping below $100 for sure during sales. So let's tear down the case and see what we get. Starting off with the main chamber. Tempered glass is secured via 2 thumb screws, top and bottom, and can be removed by tugging back and pulling out, while the bottom of the glass is anchored down by 2 tabs when reinstalling. The PSU shroud has a mesh cover itself, and it also is removable via just 1 screw on the back, which reveals the bottom chamber, giving you easy access on this side to handle anything you need during the build process, such as cable management. And since it's ventilated, it does provide some extra airflow through the PSU chamber. Top ventilated panel is removable just by pulling up and out from the back, no screws needed. The I/O panel is also located on top, which includes the power and reset button and audio jack, 2 USB-A 3.0 and USB-C 3.2 Gen 2. Now real quick, my take on the removable top panel cover here is I think they should have made the mesh the same brick style pattern as the rest of the case. At least like the front panel cover, because I do think these dotted perforations are small compared to the larger brick style pattern, which I think should yield better temps when you're trying to exhaust hot air out the top. Also visually, I think it would just be more uniform with the rest of the case. Side panel is also removable via 2 thumb screws, top and bottom, on the back side, revealing your cable management and routing system with a removable hard drive cage at the bottom chamber. There is a dust filter at the bottom here for your PSU, and your PSU clearance is going to be 270 millimeters with the hard drive cage installed, which is plenty, even leaving some room to handle your cables. The back panel is also ventilated at the bottom portion to provide airflow through the PSU chamber, just like the front PSU shroud cover. Now for your storage drives, you can have up to 2 3.5-inch hard drives, one on top and bottom of the cage, or up to 2 2.5-inch SSDs on top of the cage in a couple of different orientations. Cable management channels here are also supported with Velcro ties, which help route your cables in the most optimal path. A quick realization for me here is that the rubber grommets for the cables here seem to be very fit and not loose. They actually wrap around and hug onto the cable pass-through cutout edges, which are also cut and bent in a way that allows them to do so. Now this might sound like a minor thing, but I can tell you in so many cases, so many times when I'd be passing a cable through, the grommets just come right off because it gets caught onto a part of the cable, which is expected, but it's the fact that it comes off so easily and it's so loose on that cutout. But I can tell you that the G400A here, PHANTEKS did put some thought into that, and they designed it so that it hugs onto the pass-through more tightly. Going back to the motherboard tray, as you can see by the cutouts, it is compatible with back connect motherboards like Asus BTF and MSI Project Zero. Front panel actually has 3 layers that come off. First is the brick style ventilated mesh cover, then it's the fine mesh dust filter, and then an inlet intake frame that is designed to reduce turbulence and improve airflow. At the same time, I think this also acts as a vanity cover, as it does hide the screws and less attractive mounting frame for the fans. Now, going back to the main chamber, the midplate does seem to have the same or similar layout to the XT Pro. You're able to mount up to 3 120mm fans, which also have been proven that won't make any difference to your GPU temperatures if that's the goal, but they will provide some general intake air through the ventilated PSU chamber if needed. Additionally, there is an LED strip across the front of the midplate here for some nice accent lighting as well. The G400A does allow eATX motherboards up to 280mm wide. CPU air cooler clearances up to 184mm tall, which would even fit something as massive as the Noctua NHD15 or NHP1. And GPU clearances up to 415mm in length, which can hold big cards like the 4090 Strix no problem. The case does come pre-installed with 4 140mm RGB fans, which are the new M25 Gen 2. 3 on the front and 1 on the rear. As for the top panel, you can fit up to 2 140s or 3 120s. Now, going back to the front panel, it can only mount 140 fans, not 120s, while the rear can do both 120 and 140. So a quick talk about the new M25 Gen 2 fans here. They are daisy chainable via the new Link 6 cable, which I'll talk about in a bit, and they are held together via these clips and side screws. But if you mount these on a custom loop radiator, depending on the brand, the clips at the end will conflict with your fittings. For example, EK fittings are a bit larger, so I had to shave down the end clips with a Dremel. I can also confirm that fittings like Bits Power and Alpha Cool are smaller and they will work just fine without any issues. Okay, now before I jump into radiator support, while I'm on the topic of these new Gen 2 fans, I want to talk about NextLink, which is Phanteks' new ecosystem for controlling their RGB lighting and their fans, and they do it all via one 6-pin cable. This is the NextLink hub. It's powered by a 6-pin PCIe cable, connects via internal USB to your motherboard, and has channels for both the new Link 6 and older legacy devices like the D30s and M25s. Link 6 uses a single 6-pin cable that joins DRGB and PWM together. A single Link 6 channel can take a maximum of 6 fans or an AIO with 3 fans. Now with their latest devices, Phanteks does include an adapter cable where Link 6 splits off into the JST DRGB and PWM separately in case you either don't have the hub or just want to connect to the motherboard the old-fashioned way. So going back to the case and radiator support, you can fit a 360 or 280 up on top. In terms of their thicknesses, 45mm like this EKP360M with standard fans is pretty much touching the VRMs of the motherboard and would be the absolute maximum I can recommend. At the rear, 120 rad only. I would personally go no more than 45mm thick like this EKP120M. Now, depending on your config and brand, if you wanted to roll with 360 on top and 120 at the back together, you might need to go for a slim 360. In my example here, EK rads typically run a bit bigger than other brands, so I went with a slim 360 and a slim 120 rad. Okay, so the front panel was designed to only mount fans in mind. However, I was able to mount this 280 rad up front. This is an XT45 by Alpha Cool. It's 45mm thick, and I was also only able to do so when I ditched that third fan at the bottom of the front panel in order to clear the ports on the radiator. Now, personally, this isn't something that I would do in my build purely from an aesthetic standpoint. I think it looks silly, but I think that it's still important to mention because in case someone wanted to, say, maximize the amount of radiators they can mount in this case, they could. So the option is there. Also, a quick shout out to Titan Rig for providing some of the hardware in this video, like this radiator, so I can do my testing. They are occasional sponsor on my channel here, so please check them out. I will have their website linked down in the description. So going back to the midplate, I think mounting something like a pump rest unit would be a better use of this feature instead of mounting fans. And utilizing that frontmost spot is the only place you can mount since the other two in the back would conflict with your GPU. Overall, it's a good price point. The vibe is pretty much the XT Pro with curves and extra panels on the front. It is bigger in length and height, so you will have more freedom with custom loop hardware, while systems that are running air coolers and AIOs will have no significant difference when it comes to the building experience. As for the front panels only allowing 140s and not 120s, I don't think that's a big deal. Only fans on the front won't matter for AIOs or air cooling builds, and it's also fine for custom loops not being able to mount a full-length radiator on the front because you can run a 360 up on top with a 120 on the rear, giving a total of 480mm of radiator to handle even high-end components like a 4090 with an i9 on the same loop. Alright, so that's all I have for this video. Thanks for watching.